Now, most people think that credit repair starts with disputing accounts, and it doesn't. Okay. It first starts with making sure that your personal information on your credit report belongs to you. And I see this all the time on credit reports, whether it's wrong addresses, wrong names, even birthdays. And if your personal information is wrong, every built on top of it becomes shaky down the line when it comes to wanting to dispute accounts. So today, I'm going to talk about your first practical and tactical step and when that you can take to be able to have a clean foundation when it comes to the disputing process. Now, I want to be very clear. Before we go any further, updating your personal information does not raise your credit score by itself. It does not magically delete real debt. It also is not just disputing accounts. It doesn't help with that process. But what it does do is make sure that your report is accurate, protected, and is not mixed with someone else's data. And this step is about accuracy, it's about safety, and it's about leverage down the line when it does come to the disputing process. So I'm going to go over all that tonight, the full strategy, how to do it successfully, so then that way we're setting ourselves up for success. So for those of you on TikTok right now, YouTube right now, as I go through this information, please drop your questions in the chat because I would be happy to answer those while we're here for the next 30 to 45 minutes, going over the exact steps to take when it comes to updating and getting your personal information corrected. So here's why this is step one. And this is why this is so important, right? So I have 3 reasons why getting your personal information correct comes first before you even start disputing accounts in your credit profile. So reason number 1 is that your personal information, if it is wrong, it can mean that you suffer from identity theft or a mixed credit file where someone else's information gets attached to yours. So I've seen cases to where people come to me and they're like, yeah, I do not recognize this account at all on my credit profile. They may have had phones put in their name. They may have had different accounts put in their name because of identity theft. Someone stole their identity. And that's one reason why you want to take this step first. Also, as well, you may have a mixed file to where you have similar information to someone else. And when they apply for something, it somehow got attached to you, right? So that's one thing that we want to look for. Reason number 2 is that the same personal information on your credit report is what lenders see when you apply for things. So if your name is wrong, if your address is wrong, or if your birthday is wrong, it can increase the chances of error, confusion, as well as denial. So I have a personal story with this, where this happened to me, to where I had some wrong information on my credit report, and I just simply got it fixed, and it resolved the problem. So this current apartment that I'm in right now, when I moved here probably 2 to 3 years ago, I moved here, but I was pretty confident that this process was going to be very smooth and seamless for me. So I had a good credit score. It was in the 700s. Income was good. I had great rental history. So I really wasn't worried about getting denied or having any hiccups throughout this process. So I went and filled out that application. I applied. I thought everything was cool. And then I got an email from the property manager who was taking me through the application process. And they said that I would have had to pay first month's rent, and the deposit will be as much as first month's rent for me to move in because there was some type of red flag on my credit. And so, of course, I called them immediately just to try to get this sorted out because I'm like, hey, my credit score is good. My income's good. Why would I have to pay multiple thousands of dollars just to move in instead of that few $100 deposit fee? So what I did and what I recommend anyone should do when it comes to getting denied for something, you want to go to that creditor, go and see what credit report they pulled and get access to that report So then that way you can see what discrepancies took place and you can go and fix that information. So when I went to do that, the reason why that red flag came up was because when I put in the information for the application, whatever information I put in did not match what was reporting on the credit report. So that's where that discrepancy was. So I put in an address that wasn't correct and they tried to match it against the report, and that's what did that. So simply what I did, I went back, I put in the correct address, I got it updated properly for the credit bureaus, and then I no longer had to pay that big deposit fee. The deposit to move in was just a few $100. I got approved and I was able to move in. So that's one reason, little small hiccups like that, we want to make sure that our information is correct when it comes to that, because that can slow things down when it comes to approval processes. Now, reason number 3, this step comes first when it comes to updating your personal information, is that if you have wrong personal info on your credit report, that could be tied to negative accounts. Now, you can't challenge these accounts cleanly later if you have this negative information in your profile. So before we have any hiccups down the line when it comes to disputing and having the bureaus identify your information and making sure that you're identifying yourself correctly, we want to make sure to take care of this first. That way we do not have any problems down the line. Credit repair is about verification, and verification always starts with your identity. So we just want to always be sure to take this step first. Now, when I say personal information, I'm talking about 5 different things. So the 5 different things that I'm talking about and what you should look for your information, it first starts with your name. Okay, how is your name being listed? Typically on your credit report, it'll have your first name and last name, or it could have your first name, middle name, last name. However, whatever information that you put in for these different car loan applications, for mortgages, whatever it may be, whatever information the creditors are getting, this is what typically reflects in that personal information section. Number 2, in the personal information section, you'll see your date of birth. Okay, what year you were born in. Number 3, it'll show typically the last 4 of your social. It'll show the last 4 of your social. Next, what you'll usually see on the personal information is your current address. And then number 5, it typically shows your previous address. So those are the 5 things that you normally see in the personal information section. Now, these 5 things specifically do not affect your credit score. They affect who the report is attached to. So that's why I say we want to make sure that this information is correct, and also make sure that whatever accounts we have tied to our credit report, it matches and is congruent with the personal information section. So here's where people mess this step up when it comes to the personal information. You do not remove personal information just because it's old, right? You remove personal information because it's wrong, incomplete, and not yours. There's a lot of information online that may tell you, hey, remove this if it's old on your credit report, which you do want the most up-to-date information on there. But the main reason for updating the personal information on your credit report is if it's wrong, incomplete, and not yours. So for example, something that can be wrong when it comes to your name is the name is not yours, right? If it's just not your name, that's an error. That's incomplete, not valid information. Or if a address that you never lived at is listed on your credit report. Or it can be a birthday that's not listed correctly. So maybe your birthday could be, let's just say mine, May 6, 1995, but on your credit report it says May 9th, 1995. That's incorrect. Or it could be info tied to accounts that you do not recognize. And those are things that we do not want on our report. Now, I also want to clear up a big misconception that people have when it comes to this step. Updating your personal information does not delete accurate negative accounts. Updating your personal information does not delete active or accurate negative accounts. Also, if a debt is real and belongs to you, it's going to stay on your credit report. If a debt is real and it belongs to you, it's going to stay on your credit report. But if an account is only on your credit report because of incorrect personal data, fixing the data can cause it to be removed, right? So it's very simple. I like drawing and breaking this down so that way we know. So if an account is not yours, it must be removed. But if an account is yours, or if the personal information is yours, it stays. Simple. All right. Now, this process works best in 3 different situations when it comes to your personal information. So, updating your personal information makes sense in this situation if you have a mixed file. So, a mixed file can mean that someone else's whatever history, credit history they have, or whatever they have going on, and say if they have a similar name to you, or even if it could be a family member or even an old roommate, that information can be tied to you. Okay? That information can be tied to you. So this is when it makes sense to make sure that you're getting this personal information updated on your credit report. Now, the second situation to where you want to get your personal information updated and corrected on your credit report is if you've been a victim of identity theft, okay? But true identity theft, right? We're not making false claims. We're not doing these things that people tell you to do on TikTok and make these false claims of identity theft. I'm talking about actual identity theft. Someone actually stole your information and someone actually used your information without your permission to open up accounts in your name, okay? Let's get that clear. We're talking about actual identity theft. And then next is accounts tied to addresses or names that don't belong to you. So if you have an account on your credit profile that does not belong to you and it's tied to your personal information, we want to make sure that gets updated and make sure that that gets corrected, because that can affect you through approval processes. Okay, so if an account can't be verified as yours, it can't stay on the credit report. Like I said, credit repair is about verification, making sure that all information is accurate, up to date, and correct on your credit report. So if it cannot be verified, it should not stay on the credit report. So here's how the bureaus actually operate when it comes to this process, okay? So we're going to talk about how they actually operate and how they even go about this process. So they will remove personal information that is wrong or not tied to any active accounts. All right, I see this often. People go to update information on their credit report, and a lot of the times the credit bureaus are going to give you a hard time to get either old addresses or anything like that removed, because those things are currently tied to active accounts that you have on your credit report. Also, they will not remove accurate information that creditors are still reporting on your credit report. And that's why sometimes an address disappears and then comes back later. All right, because that creditor is still reporting that information. The bureaus follow the data trail. So the reason why you have this information on your credit report in the first place is because they're following that data trail. They're receiving that information from the creditors, and then they're reporting that on your credit report. All right, it goes in a simple flow like this. It goes from the creditor to the bureau to your report. It's that simple flow right there. So when this information gets reported for you, it starts with the creditor, once you apply for whether a credit card, student loans, car loan, whatever it may be, then that information gets sent to the credit bureau, and then that's what gets listed on your credit report. So that's the simple flow that goes in and how that works. So with all that being said, now I'm going to show you how to actually do this the right way. Now this is the same system that I use with my current clients. It's simple, clean, and does not require any guessing. So I'm going to break this down as simple as possible so then that way you understand this whole process. And I broke it down into an acronym. And we're going to go letter by letter on this acronym just to show you and break this process down very simply for you. So after I get all this erased, we'll go through this. So this acronym is as follows. We got I, D, E, N, T, I, T, Y. Identity. So the acronym is identity. Clever, right? So I'm going to go through each letter on what it means so then that way you understand this framework and this process to getting your personal information updated seamlessly as we go through here. So that, as I mentioned, for those of you on TikTok and YouTube right now, if you have any questions as I'm going through this, or if you have anything that you want to share, also if this is making sense for you, please let me know so then that way I know we're all following along here. And leave your questions in the comments as well. So the first letter that I want to talk about is the I, which stands for, the I stands for identify errors. The I stands for identify errors. Step one is identifying errors. So the first thing that you need to do to be able to identify errors is to download all 3 of your credit reports. So you want to make sure to go to annualcreditreport.com. And once you go to annualcreditreport.com, there will be a big green button on that front home page. Click that button and get access to your reports from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And then once you get your reports, you want to go to the personal information section on that, which is typically located towards the top of those credit reports. And then you're going to circle anything that you do not recognize or that you know is wrong on your credit report. All right. So step one for identifying errors is get reports and then circle errors. So if you're looking at your name and your name's not spelled correctly, or if you're looking at the date of birth that's incorrect, or your current address or previous addresses, if there's any misspellings or just things are not reporting accurately on those accounts, you want to get those reports and then circle those errors. All right, so that's step one for you. Now, for the D, an identity, the D in identity stands for download and document. Download and document. That stands for download and document. You never want to do this just from memory when you're going through this process. And this is just in general when you are getting your credit reports and downloading them and using them as you're going through the credit repair process. You always want to download your reports and document. So once you get your reports, you want to go ahead and save them, screenshot them, and then also date them. And you can even save them in a folder on your computer or print them out. So then that way you always have records of these reports, because it's going to be very important to make sure that we have the before and the after when we're disputing things, because documentation beats conversation and it protects you through the credit repair process. Because if we do not have this documentation, it will be very easy for the credit bureaus to say they did one thing, and if we don't have our proof of that and be able to track that, how are we going to rebuttal? Like if we don't save our reports and have that pure documentation with our error circle and say they claim one thing, if we have that proof, we can go and say, hey, we have this proof, I have the leverage, and you need to fix these things on our credit report. So it's very important to make sure that we download and document this whole process, so then that way we make it very seamless to get the results that we're looking for. Now, we talked about download and document. So let's go to the next one, which is execute by channel. And I'm going to explain what this means. The E stands for execute by channel. Now, you have 3 ways to update your information on your credit report. You can either do it online. Okay? Now, when you do it online, it is fast, but you can be limited when it comes to doing this online. Okay? So that's one way you can do it. You can also do it by phone. All right? You can do it by phone. Now, personally, I think phone is best when it comes to updating your personal information, just because you can just simply call them and get things taken care of, okay? Now, when it comes to doing it by phone, results vary, but also time varies. So when you do this by phone, make sure that you have time to be able to sit on hold, because some of the credit bureaus, they'll have you on hold for as little as, say, 20 minutes. Others could have you on hold for 2 hours. There was one time where I was trying to contact TransUnion, and they had me on hold for about 1.5 hours, and I actually fell asleep. And then I woke up once I heard someone on the other end of that line, right? So just make sure that you have a good amount of time. You're not busy, you're not doing anything, so then that way you can go ahead and get that handled by phone. Now, the third way to do this is by mail. Now, mail can potentially be slow, but it's also the best way to create a paper trail for yourself, the strongest paper trail. Because when you send these personal information letters in to get your information updated and corrected, you can send it certified mail. That way you have that process tracked. And if they happen to say that they didn't receive anything or they're not changing it for whatever reason, you have your proof and you have your paper trail, your tracking number, and proof that they actually got this. Because there are times to where these credit bureaus will say they didn't receive anything. I just had a client that had to get their information updated, so we needed to send like a cover letter in because the credit bureaus say they couldn't follow through with different disputes going in because the information was not matching up. So we actually sent in a cover letter, say, I think it was like 3 months ago, and we also sent it certified mail. And the credit bureau, specifically Equifax, said that they did not receive it. But on our end, because we tracked this process, we actually had the tracking number to say, hey, you need to update this because you did receive this. Now, it did take some escalation. It's funny because my client actually cussed them out. He did. He was like, I usually don't do this, but they keep taking me through the ringer. They're saying they didn't receive it, but I have our proof on our end, and they said they just cussed them out, and they talked to the supervisor, and then they finally got it updated. So sometimes you have to be brash and harsh with these people because they'll just try to not do their job and do things that aren't in your best favor, so then that way you can move on with the things that you need to do. Now, I said that the best way, or my personal favorite, I'm not going to say the best, my personal favorite way to do this is to just call, right? Just to get this handled over the phone. But in my opinion, there also is no best way, no best method. I just think the best way to do something is the best way for your situation, okay? I don't want to get caught in saying do it this exact way because always work. There's multiple ways to skin a cat when it comes to this process. So I just think that the best way is whatever fits your best, that's in your best interest, and that best fits your situation throughout this process. So we just talked about execute. So how to execute. Now, let's go to the next one, which is the N, which is net. Oh, I don't even know how to spell this one. Hold on. Don't mind me. Necessary proof. The N stands for necessary proof. The bureaus don't change identity information on your credit report just because you said so. They need proof. All right, we got to stop with these blanket claims and just thinking that they have to do something. Because if they had to do something, they would have done it by now, right? So in order to help our claims and help what we're trying to do and assist in what we're trying to do, let's have the necessary proof, all right? Because when we make these claims, this is the flow chart for it. We have a claim. So we'll have our claim like, hey, this information is wrong. This is what it should be. So if we're saying this is what it should be, that's our proof. Let's have something to back that information up. That way we can make this process a lot easier. All right? And then once we have that proof, they should update. They should update. So what is proof when it comes to having the necessary proof to get this personal information updated and corrected on your credit report? Your ID is proof, so a copy of your ID, just a photocopy, send that in. That proves who you are. It's proper documentation. Also, bills to prove where you live, so it could be like a utility bill, it could be a phone bill, it could be a water bill, just something that clearly lists your name and your current address that you stay at that you want to get updated to be correct on your credit report. Also, let's just say for your name, proper court documents to prove name changes. So people get married, people change their name. So if you need that information to get updated, make sure that you have copies of the proper court documentations to get that done. So like I said, this process will go a lot easier if we have our claim, our proof, and then they should update it on the credit report. Now, let's go to the next letter. Let's go to the next one, which is talk to the creditors. Now, I never hear anyone talk about this when it comes to this process, right? I never hear anyone talk about this. This step is probably the most overlooked step when it comes to getting your personal information updated. It's the most overlooked step. If a creditor still has wrong information on you, the bureau may keep it on the report. So sometimes you'll want to update with the banks just to get your personal information updated because they're the one that's sending that information. So when you apply for a loan, it first goes through the creditor. Let's draw this out for you. When you first apply for the loan, it first goes through the creditor. And then the creditor sends that information to the bureau. All right. And then it's on the report. But if we go to the creditor first, that'll get updated with the bureau, and then it could potentially be fixed. Now, this happens with me sometimes, or this is what I'm sure, this is what I also make sure to do. So anytime my address gets updated or anything, you always just want to go to the bank. So make sure all your accounts are updated with the bank, or just call them to get that information updated. I just updated an address that I had with the bank, I would say probably about 5 months ago with a bank that I have. And I had an address from like 7 years ago still in that system. For what? Right? So I made sure to get that information updated so then that way everything is reporting correctly. So what I want you to do when it comes to this, either all the creditors that you have information with that's currently reporting on your credit profile, call each creditor or go into your backend portals and make sure that your address is updated correctly. Because if we update it with the creditor, then that information can also go to the bureau, and that's how we can also get that stuff fixed on our credit report. All right? So we want to talk to the creditors. Now, next. And also, I'll put an extra letter in here. Next is I, okay? I, which is investigate results. Investigate results. Disputes don't end when you just submit them. All right? Disputes do not end once you just submit them. They end when you read the response. Verified means that they checked and looked into the request. So if they come back and said, hey, this information is verified, that just simply means that they, and I want to say just looked into it, because sometimes they don't actually look into it, but that's what it should mean, that they looked into it and they was able to provide the proof that it is verified. Or they may come back and say that it was corrected, which just simply means that it was changed and updated, or deleted, which just means that it's gone. All right, so those are the three options that will happen when it comes to getting the results after submitting these requests to get that information updated. Now, let's talk about the next letter. So the next one is try again. Because people get discouraged and they just stop trying. And I hate that. Let me not say hate. I just dislike when people try something once and then they stop trying. So I'm telling you to try again. That's what that T stands for. Try again. So if you try this and nothing changes, so let's just say you try everything that I just discussed over the last 33 minutes. If you tried this and nothing changes, the first time, do not panic. That doesn't mean that you failed. All right? It does not mean that you failed. It simply means that something is still not matched correctly, and we just got to try again to get done what we're requesting to get done and hold the credit bureaus accountable to do that. So here's what you need to do next. The first thing that you need to do is find the gap. And when I say find the gap, I mean this. Something on your credit report still doesn't match your real information, and that gap could be something like an old address a creditor is still using for you. So find that gap. So wherever that, so let's just say the credit bureaus did not fix the information. When we try again, we're going back to our credit reports and we're trying to find these discrepancies in the personal information and finding the gap to bridge to say, hey, credit bureau, here's the information that I have, here's what you have, and let's bridge that gap to make sure that we can get these things updated. All right? We want to make sure to find the gap, find these errors in the personal information reporting that we can prove and have that proof and hold them accountable to make sure that they change it. We want to be strategic about this. Now, when it comes to finding that gap, again, we want to go and update our personal information with the creditor. So whatever banks we have, whatever loans we have, we want to go in these back-end portals, or we want to contact them directly to make sure that the information is correct, because that could be the gap to why your information is not being listed correctly. Now, we also want to add supporting proof. So again, we need to have updated documents. We need to have updated bank statements. We need to have updated bills with our current addresses to prove why this stuff needs to be corrected. And then once we have all that information, we then want to resubmit and update it. We want to resubmit that dispute with the credit bureaus. All right, persistence beats frustration every single time. There's no point to be frustrated in this process. Yes, it can be frustrating, but let's be persistent to make sure that we're getting this stuff done to where we need it to get done. All right, so let me draw this out for you. So let's just say this is you. Let's see, we have you. All right, we have you. And you have the correct info. All right, that's you, and you have the correct info. Now, let's just say the creditor they have the wrong info. So we have you, you know your correct information that should be listed on your credit report. But we have the creditor, because you did not update that information with them, they're still going to be reporting that wrong information for you, which means the bureau will also have conflicting information. Right? So you have the correct info, but the creditor has the wrong info, and now we have this conflict of that information not reported correctly. So do you see that? Do you see how we have a conflict? So that's why I say the most overlooked step is people not contacting the creditor to get that updated, because they're furnishing that information. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. So now let's talk about the why. I actually added an extra. Keep adding. Let's talk about why, which stands for your expectations. Your expectations. Now, this step is about cleaning the foundation that you have. It's not about deleting debt. It's not about gaming the system. What this does is make sure that your credit report is tied to you and only you. When your personal information is correct, the lenders are going to see clean data. Disputes make more sense when you send them in. Mistakes are easier to prove, and real problems are easier to fix. This step prepares you for real credit repair work down the line. So think of it like this. You don't paint a house before fixing the cracks. You don't build on a crooked foundation. That's not how you build a house. This step straightens the foundation so that way the next steps that you take actually work. So that's why you want to make sure to do this correctly, manage your expectations correctly, make sure that we're doing this first, so then that way we have a seamless process down the line and we don't have any hiccups, right? Because one of the biggest things that I see when it comes to, say, just disputing different negative accounts in general with the credit bureaus, they're always sending back responses that have to do with not being able to identify your identity, right? Identifying your identity. So this is what I want you to do. After going over all this information, here's your first action steps. That if you do this, you should be on the right path to prepare yourself to dispute. So step one is going to annualcreditreport.com and getting access to all of your credit reports. Step two, I want you to identify your personal info errors in your report. So when you go to your credit reports, is your personal information correct? So is your name listed correctly? Do you have the right date of birth listed correctly? Is the last four of your social listed correctly? Is your current address up to date and listed correctly? And is your previous addresses listed correctly? But also look for, do you have any of those things that have no association to you? Because if you do, you need to circle and identify those errors. And then the next thing that you want to do, step 3, is just choose one of the credit bureaus and just start there. Go and contact them by phone, contact them through mail, do it through the online portal. Make sure you do that. But don't rush the process. Do it right. And if you need to go back and watch this, go back and watch this and do it correctly, exactly how I said. And you should be able to make sure that your report is accurate, take that action, and get the results that you're looking for. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment on this video if you have any additional questions. Also, if you were successful through this process, let me know. Let me know what steps it took you through, because this process is always evolving and there's always new, different ways to do things. But with this way that I went over with you, it's a great way to be able to get that stuff set up correctly. That way, disputing down the line becomes easy for you, and also just making sure that you have a 100% accurate credit report. So with that, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Peace out. Peace out. See y'all in the next video.